5 different categories: the danger, the principles, then the internet, then protection, then conclusion. So the danger, of course, we're going to talk through the various aspects of where this danger comes from. I may not have hit them all, so this is certainly an interactive session. You're more than welcome to raise your hand, add to the various aspects. As I was walking through the dangers, I kept being tempted. I was talking with Cindy about this. I kept being tempted to add other elements. Many of you know that I am very passionate about internet privacy and security on top of just internet protection. And so there's a whole other wing of how to protect yourself online that's not actually spiritual in scope, right? Those are things like protecting your identity, protecting your bank account, protecting your passwords, protecting all of those things. And I'm really not intending to go there in this session. That may be something that as an evangelistic outreach and such, in the future, I'll put those things together and we'll have it on a Thursday night and invite unbelievers to come and learn how to de-Google their life and those sorts of things, and understand where it is that people are tracking you and how they're tracking you and why they're tracking you and the like, and where are the real risks and where aren't, and all of that. But that's not the scope of this. So when we talk about protection, we're talking about spiritual protection. And that is going to be the scope, and I'm going to try to keep it there. If you ask something that can be relatively quickly answered on one of these other topics, I'm happy to touch on it. But that is going to be our focus, is the dangers that the digital age present to us as it relates to our spiritual lives, our spirits, and then such. So we'll talk about the dangers themselves. Then we'll do a brief time of walking through the principles. And really all we're going to do there is we're going to walk through those places in the Gospels and in the epistles where we see lists of sins. And we're going to think through how many of those are affected by the internet and the digital age and talk through that. And then we're going to talk about the internet. And when we get to the internet, that's where I'm going to explain to you how the internet works. And as we talk through that, we're going to talk through this particular page here, and we're going to spend a good amount of time here where this laser pointer is not the one, where we can trace where the information comes and goes. And then the point of this is to show you how you can use the choke points of that information to add layers of control and protection to your lives. Now, you're never really going to be able to know those choke points unless you know that they exist, and then know how to access them in order to be able to properly protect yourself and your family, and then also be able to record this. Now, of course, all of this you can get onto a service where you pay X number of dollars per month, and they put some software on your computer that does a great deal of this for you. But the fact of the matter is, even with that software, nowadays, anyone relatively knowledgeable can get around that fairly easily. There's just internet access is in too many places at too many points and the like. So, and then we'll also talk about the limitations, particularly as it relates to mobile digital devices. There are limitations to the extent to which I can protect myself practically, because hotspots are everywhere. The ability for software to monitor is limited on mobile digital devices and the like. So then there comes a point where one of the things that we're going to talk about with protection is, and this is so important, parents especially, we live in a world, and it's always been this way, but perhaps all the more so in the internet age. We live in a world where it's not enough just to say, I'm going to keep my kids from coming across. No, you aren't. You might for a time, but there's going to come a point where they're going to come across what the internet is seeking to reveal to them. So the idea is protect them for long enough to strengthen them spiritually and teach them how to protect themselves spiritually. Because the true protection from any sin is not cloistering ourselves in some far-off mountain somewhere, away from all things that could possibly tempt us. right? We don't go live in rags and sell everything that we have and have no mirrors on the wall to save ourselves from vanity and from materialism and the like. What we do is we learn how to spiritually regulate our temptations and our lusts with the Holy Spirit's help and guidance. But of course, that doesn't mean that we want to place undue temptation in front of us, especially in the place that is most safe to us, which is our home. And second, there's an age where our children just aren't yet equipped. And that's the age where we need to be particularly proactive in protecting them from actual influence. Now, that's not the age where you say, well, you just got to learn to suck it up, son, and see these things without allowing your mind to get... No. That's the age to protect them and to teach them how to bring their thoughts into captivity, to teach them how to avoid the snares. So that's kind of how we're going to plan to go about doing this. And we'll spend a good amount of time on this, talking about how the internet works itself. And then I'm just going to take you through how to use that knowledge, there we go, to protect yourself, and what options are out there to do so, from not too hard, but also not too thorough, to it's going to take a little bit of time, but you can do it. Or it might take a little money, but you can do it. None of them will require subscription services, though. It'll all be one-time investments as far as these things are concerned. And then we'll have some concluding thoughts. It's a Tuesday afternoon, so I figure I can eat and teach at the same time. That being said, well, not a Tuesday afternoon, Sunday afternoon. Still got Tuesday on the brain for this session. That being said, I'm not particularly convinced that this is as thorough as it needs to be. I'm hoping that this will be our time to make it more thorough. So ask questions, lots of questions. I'll take notes. I'll say I need to add this to the curriculum, and then we'll see what lands, what doesn't, and we'll pare it down to something that, once again, my hope will be that we can take this curriculum and I can present it on a Thursday night to people in the community with the gospel. And people can learn how to protect their children as well as hear the gospel. And I'm hoping that these are things that we can do. So let me begin this way, and I want to begin in an interactive fashion. What is it that, when I said that we're going to teach on the dangers of the digital age and spiritual protection, what is it that came to your mind, and what were perhaps some of the things that you walked away saying, I want to be a part of this, or I want to hear this because of this? What are the things that you would be looking for in a presentation such as this? Yeah, and that is the very foundation, right? The internet is such an amazing tool. And we've seen over the last several years, we support missionary Dan Bergman, missionary Eli Giltner, as well as the Hardings, who we met just a couple of weeks ago. All of them are using the internet in dramatic ways. Missionary Giltner's latest letter, I read it ahead of time. I'll read it hopefully on Tuesday, if I remember to print it and bring it. The number of people he's seeing saved online, and then he points them primarily to Dan Bergman's website, New to Jesus. And Dan, the number of people he's seen saved, because that is where people are. And when they're looking for answers, if a person is looking for spiritual answers, they're not stepping into the doors of a church to find spiritual answers. They're going to TikTok to find spiritual answers. And that kind of makes my, it's just, I struggle with that idea. They're going to the digital marketplace to hear about spiritual things, which is the place of the cults and the place of all that stuff, right? It's the place of danger, but it is the way it is, right? So the internet has so much value for information. My children the other day, we were talking about something and piranhas came up. What's a piranha? Well, this is a piranha. Oh, well, why are they so dangerous? Because we were reading in a book that they're dangerous. Well, let's take a look, and you get on YouTube and there's a BBC video, and wouldn't you know it, piranhas chewing something to bits in 2 minutes, right? That's why they're dangerous. It's an amazing resource. But all of those suggestions on YouTube on the side, what to view next, the ads that come up before the video itself. Even if I'm going to search something specifically, I don't have control over what's happening between my computer and those servers and back. And this is where it's not just the idea of, okay, I know which websites I can visit, they're safe. Yeah, maybe, but can we make it safe, the internet safe, right? To use and add those limitations. Good. Anything else? Sarah? Yeah, yeah, very good. There is a real aspect to the internet, especially social media, of hunting you down, and that may sound, that may not be the right way to describe it, but social media is looking for you, and the whole point of social media is such, and as such, it is something where it's not enough, again, yeah, just to, okay, avoid that corner of the internet. Well, that corner of the internet might very well find you, and for those, for our young men, we know that it doesn't take a whole lot to stir visual curiosity in a young man, at which point then that can take us all to places that we don't want to go. Kimberly, was there a hand? Yeah. Even said advertisements, right? Those are things that this is not what I intended to invite into my home, and that's always been the case with television and whatnot. Although in the 90s, for 90s and then early 2000s. In the 80s as well, for a larger degree, as society became a little bit more, there was a slight awakening through in the 80s and 90s. The society got a lot more conservative. There was a great deal more church attendance. Most of that probably you can lay at the feet of Billy Graham. But it was a conservative time in this country, and so the things that were allowed on television were much more tempered, right? Tame. You don't have even those gatekeepers. Even if those gatekeepers still thought that way, which they don't, you don't have them anymore on the internet. You have individual gatekeepers. You don't have a broad, regulated thing. And in one sense, that's wonderful, because then you can get out of the narrative, right? And you can find truth if you can find it. But it's also dangerous, because that means it's not regulated. And so yes, very good. I think all of those things are things that we'll talk on, so that's a good sign that I've covered in this those broader concerns. Well, let's dig into the dangers a little bit. And as we think about the spiritual dangers of the internet, the spiritual dangers come in what I would say 3 primary forms. Again, if you can think of a 4th, 5th, 6th, let me know, and we'll talk through them and see if they fall under this umbrella or not. And those 3 primary dangers are social media, pornography, and consumption. Now, social media, pornography is the one we all think about, right, when it comes to the internet. It used to be that you actually had to go out of your way to find pornography as a child. Now the pornography finds you. And that is a huge societal shift in our society. It hasn't always been that way, right? I think back to the days of the Temple of Diana in Ephesus, and that place was a place where they had all the temple prostitutes. And I would imagine that just walking around town, children would probably see some things that they shouldn't otherwise see, because it was a place of true immorality. But as far as our culture is concerned, pornography is the one that we often think about. The next one is social media. But I put social media first because I do believe that social media is probably the more difficult one today for us to deal with, because pornography is pornography, right? That is the wing of the internet that you're either going to or you're not going to. It used to be, in the early days where the internet was the complete wild, wild west. That was when I was growing up. And you had AOL discs that they would have at every single store, and you go and put that AOL disc in, and you get 200 free minutes of internet, and you had your 56K modems that would go ding, 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 and then crackle and yell at you, and then you'd get online. In those days, there were pop-ups that were just absolutely out of control, to where pornography was just throwing itself at you. You go to look anything up, and pornography is there. Malware on your computer all the time. It's not quite that bad anymore. That's been brought under control some. Pornography, there are certain ways that it can still rear its head without you looking for it, but not as much as social media. Social media is it's the town square. It's the place where people are going to interact. And yet it is an extremely dangerous place in different ways than we might regularly think about the danger of the internet. And then consumption. And this is the last one, and this is one of the ones that I kind of alluded to today in Genesis 22. The idea of just wasting time. the idea of being distracted, that you are determined to sit down and to read your Bible and to spend time in prayer, and ding, 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 right? And your phone is dinging, and talking, I think it was James and Joel. Joel was talking a little bit about a young man he had working for him and internet addiction, right? The idea that this generation, Gen Z particularly, they're dealing with this internet addiction idea where they cannot be without their phone. They have panic attacks if they don't have their phone on them, if they cannot connect to news, to friends, to whatever it might be. And this is a problem from a psychological standpoint and certainly a societal standpoint, but it's really a spiritual problem, isn't it? See, because your pastor teaches for like 45 minutes to an hour. And Gen Z can't sit and listen to a guy for 45 minutes to an hour without doing this. They'll put someone in their ears to go do whatever, work out or whatever it might be, and then they'll put it on 2x speed, and they'll run through it real fast, consuming it. I already talk kind of fast. Have you found it kind of hard already to absorb everything that you might get on a Sunday morning? Now put that at 2x speed and go, swing a hammer at the same time. And that's the culture we live in, right? And it's fine for some things, but some things you've just got to slow down, right? With the Word of God, sometimes you just have to slow down and meditate. You have to be still. You have to be able to listen. And we are in a culture where the internet has caused us to struggle listening, slowing down, meditating, being still enough for the Spirit of God to do His work in us. We're just ready to go to the next thing. We're ready to read the news again. You finally get a little piece on a Sunday morning, and then you pull out your phone and you start reading about all the fights in Washington, and all of a sudden all that piece is gone. And so this idea of consumption is a real danger as well that we need to talk about. So let's talk, that's not what I want, social media. Okay, so social media. The first real danger of social media is simply the algorithm. So the reasons for social media to exist might vary, right? Various social media platforms exist for various reasons. But at the end of the day, their sustainability model is one thing and one thing alone: advertisements. Advertisements are their sustainability model. And you'll find that this is the same thing with any free service that you use online. The whole thing with Google, right, was that they created these amazing services and everybody could use them for free. But that's not really true. You were exchanging your own personal data for a service. You were paying them for that service. You still are, if you use Google, with your data, with your usage, with your tendencies, with your trends, with your interests. And that data gets given, put through an algorithm, and then you're able to get extremely well-targeted advertisements for the things that you want and or need, and that makes people money, and that's a value that a business sees well enough that they're willing to pay a lot of money to these advertising companies to have access to your algorithm data. So advertisement is the lifeblood of social media, which means that the free internet being run by advertisements, nothing is free. If the service is free, you're the product. What that means is that social media is looking to serve you what is, let me move forward here. What are we doing? So social media incentivizes engagement. If social media companies make money by serving ads, then naturally the more things you're looking at, the more times your screen is refreshing, the more times you're looking at a post, the longer you're looking at a post, the more time you spend engaged, the more ads you see, and the more ads you see, the more revenue they generate. That's how social media works. What that means is that algorithms are driven, they're designed to drive engagement. If you show interest in something, it gives you more of that thing, because if that's the thing you're interested in, that's the thing it wants to show you. Now, what is the inherent danger of a system that says, if you show interest in something, I'm going to show you more of that thing to drive you to see more of it, so you'll see more ads? What are some of the dangers of that you can think of?
You only get that perspective of that topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the real spiritual dangers is that, and we'll talk about this in a moment, it drives everyone to their extremes. So if I say, if I'm looking up, politics is the best example of this, right? If a person is a conservative and the algorithm says, oh, they like conservative voices, I'm going to send them more conservative voices, and it shuts out anything but the things they'll click on. Then as they get deeper into that rabbit hole, more and more, they're subscribing to more and more of those voices, and those voices are filling up their feed. Then they stop remembering that there's anyone outside of that world. And they're driven to their ideological extremes. And that's what we've found social media has done, is it has driven people to their ideological extremes, to where people are very extreme today. And you say, well, that's a sociological problem, that's a political problem. It's a spiritual problem too. It's a real spiritual problem. Because whether that's you're seeking spiritual voices, and churches have always ended up with the problem of being driven into an echo chamber of its own belief systems. That's something that churches have always struggled with. A pastor has his own network of people, and they all believe the same thing, and no one outside of that is right or has any validity or whatever it might be. We've always had that problem, but social media takes that and just turns the dial up to 11. Good. What else? What other potential dangers? The second major danger I think of is the consumption angle, which is, it is not just showing you more of what you want, but it is doing everything it can to keep your eyes on it. Doom scrolling, right? Spending 30, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours just scrolling through your feeds, refreshing your feed. Is there anything new? Who's saying what? And you are using all of that time. You're investing emotional energy. And this is the other element of it. Have you ever engaged in conversations online? If you've never, good job. But if you have, you know that those conversations tend to go in unhealthy directions. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of nastiness. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of people who are just stressed out because of the interactions online. They are yelling at, they are putting down, they're attempting. The only way to win an argument online is to silence someone. There is no winning an argument by being right. There's winning an argument by silencing someone. And what that means is that you don't actually have arguments online to be correct. You have arguments online to dominate, which actually inverts the idea of having a productive conversation. And this is something else that social media does. So we see these things, and these are spiritual dangers. Because how long is it going to be before we bring that perspective into real life? And now all of a sudden, all of my neighbors who happen to vote for a different political candidate are my enemies, just because they're my enemies online.
I would argue that will teach how to do your job.
Yeah. And you know, if you say something stupid online, then people jump down your throat and you're embarrassed and whatever else. If you get into a conversation and you try to make it a productive conversation, it's going to be generally fall into disingenuity. People are going to throw things that are, one of the sayings is ad hominem, which is an attacking the person instead of attacking the argument. Ad hominem is, the final argument of a person that has no argument. But ad hominem is one of the primary things online. Just make the person, embarrass the person. Tear the person down, and when you've torn them down enough, they'll be quiet, and then you say you've won. And that is finding its way into the non-internet life, and it's a spiritual sickness that people are assuming. So people, as Jennifer said, this is why people are being driven to the furthest ideological extremes. This also means that social media, and this is what my wife said, is hunting for you, looking for things that will drive your engagement and addict you to their platform, because that means more advertisement dollars, which means they get to keep doing what they're doing. Servers are expensive, internet is expensive, streaming services are expensive. These services that host video and audio and everything else, YouTube has never made money. You know that? In all the years that YouTube has existed, they have never once had a profit. That is how expensive that platform is. But that's okay, because it's still the place where everything is happening. And because of that, Google is able to drive people to all of their other services through YouTube, and they're able to keep a domination on information on the internet because YouTube is the place to go. It is a money pit, but it is a money pit that gives them something else that perhaps is more important to them than money, and that's influence and power. Sarah? Right. Yeah, the old, don't believe everything you read on the internet. But we get to that point where it runs across your feed, and then it maybe runs across several times, or enough people like it, and that adds in your mind, because our minds get rewired, a natural credibility. Well, this many people saw it, this many people shared it. It must be true. So the algorithm. This means that social media is designed necessarily to prey upon the worst impulses of humanity, because those worst impulses will always drive intemperance and thus engagement. It is not the temperate, reasonable, rational, polite part of us that drives social media engagement. The part of us that drives us to engage. Now, granted, I'm broad brushing here. Mom wants all of the family around the country to see her kids and to watch them grow, so she puts her kids' faces on social media so that everyone can see, and she doesn't have to send an email to 157 people, or she doesn't have to mail out cards to all of them every Christmas and whatnot, because everyone can just engage on this mutual platform, and it's wonderful and it's delightful and there's nothing wrong with it, and that's absolutely a functional use of social media, right? So I am generalizing here. I'm not saying that if you're on social media, I would encourage you to be thoughtful about the idea of sharing pictures of your children on social media, but that's more of a privacy and security sort of a thing than it is a spiritual sort of a danger. Thinking through that idea, yes, again, the internet is a place of so much value, and if you use it properly, and if you are able to use it properly, then there's so much value in it. But the internet does not encourage you to use it properly. Social media does not benefit from me if I'm using it properly. If I'm using it just to engage with a few of my friends so that we can coordinate for the things that we're doing, and my relatives can see my children, and we can say happy birthday to people across the country, all of that's wonderful, but if that's all I'm doing with it, I'm not actually doing what social media needs me to do for them to make money. It's when I start to become intemperate, when I use it a great deal, when I start to engage with people all the time on posts, when I start having those fights, when I start doom scrolling, that's the time where I am making them money. So there is a natural tendency to draw folks unto that end, to their worst impulses, because the worst impulses is what will make them more money. Now again, that doesn't mean that Zuckerberg and Musk and all of these guys are sitting in a room saying, how can we destroy humanity and bring people to spiritual ruin? I don't even think when they built these algorithms, particularly Facebook, who was at the forefront of algorithm building until TikTok took over, I don't even think they really thought about what the implications of this algorithm were going to be. And then as they learned the implications, people going crazy, committing suicide, losing their livelihoods, all of these things, they started to temper that algorithm. Now that's why TikTok is uniquely dangerous, is because the Chinese government has a vested interest in not tempering the algorithm in the United States. In China, TikTok is a bunch of videos of like kids doing math. Like, it is an entirely different application in China. among their own people, but in the application that they distribute to the United States is just filled with debauchery and evil and the worst excesses of mankind, because that's the algorithm basically set free. And their algorithm is leaps and bounds ahead of any other social media algorithm because it's not driven by any sort of moral compass. Nowadays, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, X, they are tempered by a moral, some sort of moral compass that has tempered some of these things. But still, if they're going to make money, they have to drive engagement. It's just simply the case. So the question is then, if social media is kind of designed, if an algorithm is designed to key in on those worst impulses, what are those? Well, I've mentioned intemperance. We've mentioned that argumentative spirit, that spirit of discord. We've mentioned division, right? That parsing ideologically, driving people to the furthest corners of their ideological spectrum and kind of rooting them there and putting them in an echo chamber, making them think that anyone outside of their little circle is wrong and they are right. And then driving it to the next step, which says anyone outside of that is a fundamental danger to me and to my family and to my country and everything else. Sarah? All three of those are huge. Lust, covetousness, and this idea of comparing ourselves one to another. One of the things that we're going to talk about with social media is that social media is actually significantly more dangerous for women than for men. And it's because of this idea, women are naturally more social creatures. And it's because of the ideas that women are encouraged on social media to compare themselves to others, and so they create a fake persona of themselves on social media, and they put out that fake persona, and then everyone else looks at them and says, well, this is who they are, and they have this perfect life, and why don't I have that perfect life? And so then they're miserable, and the bigger part of that is then fishing for affirmation, where these young girls, particularly, it happens with men too, but particularly with young girls, they make a post and they do it specifically to get the likes. And they've got to get those likes. And it's like an addiction in and of itself. And if they don't get enough, then they will go to extreme lengths to get those likes. And they will seek for that affirmation. And it's unhealthy. And then, of course, we've all perhaps known someone on social media that will fish, right? So they'll just put, oh, what a hard day, ... And then they'll send that out. And all they're craving is for someone to, oh, what's going on today? And then fishing for compliments and for affirmations and such. And it is unhealthy. It's emotionally, spiritually unhealthy. But it drives us to those impulses. William, did you have something there? Excellent. Yeah, so falls definitely, I like the word lasciviousness there as it relates to a great deal of this. And then you also, you said vanity and hypocrisy, right? Dissimulation would be a word that we'd often see in the King James toward this end, dissimulation or hypocrisy. That you have a curated image of yourself that is not real. And I've said before, church was kind of the original social media in that sense. Right? You'd get cleaned up on a Sunday, and you'd put together a curated version of your family that all come to church, and we're all smiling and happy, and then you go home, and it all falls apart. And that is a hypocrisy and a vanity that says, I must look a certain way. Now, that doesn't mean that we come here disheveled and falling to pieces, right? We're in public. We are here to interact with one another, to not distract each other and the like. But the idea that I'm living a lie and I'm presenting myself as something I am not to the people that are around me as a means by which to garner their praise. And then also, as we talked about in Galatians, to elevate myself above others. And all of that they are impulses that social media preys upon and compels us to desire more of as we seek to play the game that social media kind of compels us onto. Good. Anything else? Yeah, and you're absolutely right about that, that what we are seeing is not new, that there's always been the gossip and the ability, the cutting and within a unbelieving society, and then within the church, but we'd still say that they're acting like unbelievers in those senses. There's always been this idea of all of these things have always been around, right? The vanity and the lasciviousness and the lust and the covetousness, the predatory, the predators and the predatory instinct and all of these things. The internet has amplified it. It has sped it up. And I agree with you in part, Cindy, that in one sense, for a number of people, there is a connection in the sense, a measure of accountability. You connect yourself to a name, or at least if somebody's doing something and a journalist wanted to dig down and figure out who this is, they can connect credit card numbers and whatever else, and you can dig people up. So there is a paper trail, although the people that are doing real bad stuff, there's plenty of ways to not have that paper trail. Let me just put it that way. Well, the paper trail's still there, but those in power hold the levers there. So yes, I agree. But what I think we see with the internet, and this is the example I would give. It used to be that for that guy to get that pornographic magazine, it would either be mailed to his house and it would have a black cover on it. And every single person that saw the mail knew exactly what that was. Or he would be going into a place and he'd buy it. For the magazine, or he'd have to go to the gentleman's club and find his way through the back door where no one saw him and no one saw his car or someone dropped him off or whatever it might be. Now, in the darkness of your own basement, you have access to the kind of debauchery that none of those men would even imagine. And probably most of them, for all of their lack of moral scruples, would never even entertain before their own eyes. But pornography has this amazing way of becoming addictive and driving you, just like everything else on the internet, to deeper, harder, crazier, worse stuff. And because of that, it is, I think that the internet, yes, these tendencies have always been there, but the internet has, I believe, truly amplified them. Not just made it faster, but it's actually taken the standard of things like gossip and things like this back and forth and amplified it. Why it may not necessarily seem that way in total is you have such a broader pool to gossip. So, in small town North Dakota, there was just no way to get away from it, right? It is small group of people. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's in everyone else's business. It's gross. It's frustrating, and it's unavoidable. Well, now we don't know each other. I don't know my neighbors, right? So we're not gossiping about each other. But the scope of gossip is now just through the roof as it relates to everyone else, right? We've changed the pool of people we're gossiping about and the pool of people we're gossiping unto. I might still be gossiping about all my neighbors, but I may not be doing it to other neighbors. I may be doing it to the people, in my Reddit group or on my Discord, and so. There is it's definitely bringing out a different form, I would say. And the point is very, very well taken that we are not dealing with something fundamentally new in human nature. We're only dealing with something fundamentally new in the manner in which it is presented, and it is fundamentally new in the ability to access people. So like a vanity, right? This young girl wants to get attention. In my day, guy wanted to get attention. He started wearing all black clothes and he put black fingernail polish on and he wore a spiky necklace And he got those contacts that cover your pupils so that when you look at him, it's all white and it's really spooky. And like you knew, that's a kid who just, probably doesn't have a dad at home. He's looking for attention. He wants somebody to get, he's trying to get a rise out of people. Well, now, that same guy can get online and can get all of the attention he wants as long as he knows the formula. And of course, right now, the formula is change your gender or, become extremely provocative or controversial. Usually for women, it's prostitute yourself. Those are the ways to get the attention. And you can get the attention of if somebody were to do that in small town wherever, at some point there's a limiting principle where somebody smacks you across the head and says, you're done. No more of that. You've gotten all the attention you need. Go home. But you're not going to get that online. No one's going to tell you to go home. You're just going to get thousands of people saying more. Give me more. Do more of that. Go to the furthest extremes of that. And let me help you do it. That's the danger. Kimberly.
There's the flip side of that will problems for people.
Yeah, the cyberbullying idea, and from a spiritual perspective, it goes both ways. But the perspective that I think is more important for us to think through is the idea of being the bully. And what I mean by that is, as far as anonymity is concerned, they're called keyboard warriors, right? And the idea with the keyboard warrior is, I don't know this person, so I can tear them down. I can destroy their life. And there will be, we talk about doxing and everything. And if I sit down with my neighbor who is fundamentally ideologically opposed to me in every conceivable way and hates Christianity, but I sit down with them, we are most likely not going to end up attempting to destroy each other's lives, tear each other to ribbons, right? My neighbor comes, and I know that he's got ideologically messed up perspective, and he is spiritually absolutely all over the place. And I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to say, hey, how you doing today? And he's going to say, pretty good. And I'll say, how are the kids? Well, the kids are doing pretty well. Hey, I noticed over there that you've got a fence post that's leaning. You want my help? And we'll go get that. We'll go get that straightened out. And we'll straighten it out, and we'll have a nice time together, and we'll talk about the things we can talk about, and maybe we'll even get on our disagreements. But you know what we're not going to do, generally speaking, is we're not going to start yelling at each other and tearing each other down, and because we're neighbors, and because when I look a person in the eye and I start to think about why it is they believe what they believe, there's a human there, right? There's a human that has problems and has needs and has issues and has desires, and then I say, oh, yeah, you think this way because of these things that have happened to you, and I guess I get that. I don't agree with you, but let me give you something to think about. But that's not how it goes online, because these people are anonymous. You're not talking to another human being. You're not talking to someone with flesh and blood and eyes and a soul. You are talking to an avatar, a digital picture. You don't know them. You don't care about them. You don't care to care about them, and that means you can just be nasty. Sarah.
They can't punch you through the internet.
Right.
They go too far, and they don't have
Yep. Right. And that's another great point is sometimes conversations are more civil simply because you're not going to tell that man, you're not going to speak to that man that way because you don't want to get in a fight. You don't want to get punched in the face. You don't want to say that when you know they know where you live. But if they don't know who you are and they don't know where you live, then maybe I'll just say whatever I want to say to them. And they're social issues, but they are dangers as it relates to us indulging our worst impulses. And that is a spiritual danger, isn't it? Because whether or not I would treat my neighbor that way, if I'm treating people that way, there's something in my heart that is there. It's there. And that needs to be addressed. Sarah? Yep. Very good. And the pace means, and one of the things that's really come since President Trump became president in 2016, one of the things that has become evident that you'll hear a lot of times on the right is, with the nature of cancel culture, is never, ever, ever apologize. Because if you apologize, that's blood in the water. And so then you are brought to this manner of, and in political terms, this manner of operation that says, even if I'm wrong, I'm going to carefully I'm not going to take full ownership of that wrong, because if I do, then people do not take an apology as for reconciliation online. An apology does not lead to reconciliation online. An apology leads to, that's blood in the water. As soon as a person shows any vulnerability, everyone strikes. Again, in anonymous online. I'm not talking about you and your Facebook group of homeschool moms. I'm talking about online, right? That's where these things happen, where if a person apologizes, that makes things worse for them, not better. Because that's blood in the water, that's a vulnerability, and people are going to hammer you for that. And so these are the things that we want to be careful as it relates to the algorithm. Men, how are men in danger from this? Visual stimulus, ideological factioning, the sense of camaraderie or purpose, and anger toward the unknown on the other end. William? Right. Yeah, but in this digital age, if you acknowledge a fault, it becomes something for them. It's a handle for them to beat you with. And that is a dangerous and a very unhealthy thing. It's an unhealthy mindset. So we see these dangers. Dangers for women. Extreme actions for social affirmation and predation by set affirmators. We'll talk more about that. Heavy susceptibility to confirmation bias through emotional affirmation. So that's where we'll talk, and this is where we're going to go next time. We have to stop there for today. But next time we're going to talk about danger as it relates to the people. We're going to talk about anonymity. That girl, you let your daughter onto a chat room and she's talking to other 12-year-old girls, or are they 50-year-old men? You don't know. You can't know. And this becomes a danger as well, the idea of dissimulation, hypocrisy, misrepresenting yourself. That's where we'll go next time. So this is what we're talking through, and it's good. I know that means we're kind of starting, you know me, I always start foundationally. And we need to start with what are these dangers. We need to be thoughtful about the dangers because, once again, parents, husbands, wives, we are going to talk about how to guard ourselves against these things, but then we also need to understand the spiritual roots of them so that we can be working on those spiritual roots in our lives to say, okay, I engage in social media. What am I looking for? What do I know is going to happen? How do I guard myself? And how do I live in a social media environment where people are doing this? Because we're not going to stop everyone from doing it. But how do I not engage in it myself? How far can I go into social media before I get to the point where it's affecting my life? I'm angry at people. I am being driven to the ideological extremes. I've fallen out of balance. I'm struggling with stress because of the things I'm reading online, and knowing our own limitations and then how to help ourselves through them spiritually. And Cindy was absolutely right. Every generation has needed this, right? For the small town gossip, for the various social clubs, the party lines, all of those things. You've always needed this temperance. But has any society ever needed it on this level? And has any society ever been at the point where, as my wife said earlier, where it's not just, okay, you're going to go out and you're going to be around the water cooler and there's going to be all the gossip, or you're going to, all the women are going to go to their ladies' aid meeting and there's going to be all the gossip, but it's 24/7 in your home, where there really is no place to hide from it unless you're shutting off the world for a time. And maybe that's the solution. And those are the things we're going to think through. Do we just turn off the lights on the internet at home so that this doesn't get into your home? And then you engage it in other places. Or are there ways that we can engage with it while having our eyes wide open? Okay, good. We'll stop there. And so we'll pick up again next Sunday at 1:30 again. As always, we'll do about an hour of our thinking through these things, and then we'll have our time of prayer.